in light of the unusual circumstances in which we find ourselves. Reaching out to you on Thursday with the encouragement to not hold public worship services this weekend is one of the hardest things I've spoken out loud. I have never offered such a suggestion in over 40 years of ministry. It appears that we are facing worldwide, pandemic if you will, an unprecedented challenge, and I know we all want to do our part.
Some of the mission and ministry of which we want to be engaged with in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Communities must scale up and train a large contact tracer workforce.
I'm interested.
I'm interested as well. Yeah.
Over in Batavia, about 50 people took part in a peaceful protest organized by the Ohio River Valley United Methodists.
Helping us to think about new ways of doing ministry during this COVID season.
And I'm so grateful for your work and all that you have done to make these things happen. We've now crossed past 1 million deaths due to C-19. Almost 220,000 people in the United States.
What a year. Sometimes we can remember where we were when. Other times, comprehension slowly invades our being. And at rare times, all life changes to before and after. Such has been the year since March of 2020. I remember the NPR story in January about a wild meat market in Wuhan, China, and a novel coronavirus. I remember February a year ago when the first case in the United States had been identified. I remember press conferences, wine with DeWine, beer with Bashir, and truth with television. Do you remember? Do you remember when you were told that you had been exposed? Do you remember when you were informed that one of your loved ones was on a beach in a hot spot called Fort Lauderdale, or at a wedding in Springfield? Do you remember when your test came back positive? Your parent was headed to the ICU? Your employer, church, school, business was closing? Or when you made that last goodbye with your mask, nurse in PPE holding a cell phone to your loved one's ear. What a year. 525,600 minutes. Minutes in a year, moments so dear, the lyrics say from the musical Rent. How do you measure a year? In that musical, they say, in daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee. I would add, in home-cooked food, in inches, in miles, and 6 feet of physical separation, in laughter and Zoom, in strife, and in anger and conflict over things tiny and things large. What a year. How do you measure it? by numbers and colors from a dashboard of cases and deaths and ICU admissions and positivity rates? Or by time? 30 seconds singing while you wash your hands? Or by the constant change in school, in business, in your home life, in canceled family visits, in lost haircuts, and in postponed vacations? Or maybe by fear for your health, for others, for the church, for your kids, for a job, for money, for food, for shelter? Or maybe we measure it by grief upon grief and loss upon loss. How do you measure a year in the life of a pandemic? We measure it by the name of God, Yahweh, whose definition means, I will be there. Howsoever I will be there. I am that I am. Be not afraid. I am with you. My love is stronger than your fear and than your grief. How do you measure a year? Well, let's measure it in that love. God's love which prevailed. A love that will not let you go. A love divine. All loves excelling. A love that lifted me and lifts you. Christ's love has been poured into you, and even you, through the midst of this pandemic, have expressed that love through being loving in new ways to new people. Your love, which has reshaped how the church will be church. Your love, which has helped God's love prevail. So how do you measure a year? In love. So we gather tonight in love for those who've died, for those infected and affected, for those who've recovered, and for those who've cared and helped. Tonight, we remember. We remember you. We remember with love.